Blake, how would you like me to introduce you?
Wait, are you asking for my opinion? It only took 1,491 days for you to ask.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who has too many names to be introduced, and I'm here with my co-host who needs no introduction, Toby freaking Walters.
Did you literally do the math on the days you worked?
I did.
So is today, like the day of recording, this is 1490.
1491, yep.
Okay, so how many days do you think you get to before either you kill me, I kill you, or the Washington Commanders call for you to rebrand their team again?
Brother, that would be... There's few jobs that could pull me away from here, but the rebrand for the Commanders, do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. What would you call them? The Redbirds?
I think the Red Tails is good. I think Red Wolves is probably the strongest.
But definitely something with red.
Yeah.
Because that was their branding the whole time.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So easy.
I know.
We're so off the rails here, but that is one of the top 5 branding fails in the history of humanity.
Okay. Do you have a number one?
Well, I do a top 5 so that I never have to commit to a one.
There you go.
Kind of like how you have a top 5 women in your life. You never have to pick, the number one.
Good thing my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, right?
You're married?
So I just got back from the SALT conference, and of course, our podcasts are not live because Blake and I cannot be trusted with live microphones. They have to be edited after the fact. So this is coming out sometime after SALT, but I spent a few days out in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. First of all, Amplio hosted their annual Worship Classic Golf Tournament again. And so the Calebs at Amplio invited me and said, "Hey, Toby, you can come and represent Church Gear. You guys are welcome. We're good friends with those guys. We love them." And so I kind of asked Caleb Lepke, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Dude, you can do whatever you want."
That's a dangerous thing to say to you.
So I brought my dad, and we hijacked a golf cart, and then we literally drove around, and I said, "I'm here to judge you." I go to the different holes and teams would come up and they're like, "Oh yeah, you guys do you have a hole here you're representing?" I'm like, "No, I'm just here to judge you." So that's what I did. I judged our friends out on the golf course.
Toby, is judging your friends something that they want done to them?
I didn't ask if they wanted it done to them.
Yeah, we're going out of business in 3 months, folks.
And then went to the SALT conference, and we didn't buy a booth this year. I just went and represented and, wore my Church Gear shirt and just walked around and talked to. There were a lot of our friends there, Blake. I think you were very disappointed to miss because so many cool people were hanging out there.
Yes, I was deeply offended. You brought me last year, but you didn't bring me this year, so I don't know what's going on.
Well, last year it was literally 2 miles away. This year it was three states away, and you would have had to fly.
I would fly to see, some of those folks.
Yeah. So several of our friends were presenting in the breakout sessions, and a couple of them. So first of all, Warren Davis at Life Church and Brian Bailey at Prestonwood. I saw that they were presenters, and so I texted them and I said, "Hey, would you be up for me introducing you?" And they know me well enough that they know oh, we're going to get into some nonsense, aren't we? Heck yeah, we are.
Only thing we know how to do.
So Warren and Brian both agreed to have me introduce them. And of course, nothing I said to the introduction was actually true except their name. And not even their whole name. I made up their middle names.
Yeah, Toby sent me the introductions. They were pretty funny. Do you have them on you?
I can read one of them.
I think just one.
I like Warren's especially. I felt good about that one. And Blake, you know this about me. I often do my best work on my morning walk. Mm-hmm. So I was on my morning walk and writing Warren's intro. So let's share it for the community here. So whether you know Warren or not.
This is how Toby introduced him right before he walked out on stage.
So I had to give the caveat before introducing Warren. I said, "Look, I haven't vetted any of this information. I just pulled it straight off my celebritycrush.com.
Okay.
So Warren, the bald eagle Davis, and if you know Warren, you know he's bald. He's as bald as our guest today. We'll get to that. Was born March 31st, 1827. After inventing the first cryogenic chamber, he accidentally froze himself until the battery ran out, much like our cameras today, in 1996. Immediately discovering the dark underbelly of the WWE. I didn't even know there was a dark underbelly of the WWE, Blake. I'm sure you've seen it. Warren fashioned himself a mask and tights and entered the ring to dominate professional wrestling for nearly a decade. A huge secret fan of wrestling, Pastor Craig Rochelle, spotted his talents and knew that he needed to recruit Eagle to his squad at Life Church. After the wrestling ministry struggled to gain traction, Warren found a place amongst the production team. Known in the early days for breaking chairs over the backs of his production assistants and tossing interns out of the booth, Warren then dedicated himself to learning healthy team building and leadership skills. Here today to share the valuable insights and lessons that he's learned from the broadcast team at Life Church. It's not Warren, but
the freelance production wizard and church gear ambassador, the inspiration behind the name of the bearded dragon, Jerod Toger. Welcome to the pod.
What's up, guys?
That might have been the weirdest segue we've ever done, but I kind of like it.
Your other one was even better, though, because the first sentence was like, he was born and immediately drafted into Vietnam. How is that possible?
No, it said when he was born, and then it said immediately after high school he was drafted into NAB. You saw what you wanted to see.
I was crying laughing. Okay, Toger. I'm just going to rotate between Toger and Togger here until I figure out which one it is.
Yeah, Jerod, what is the official pronunciation of the Togger?
It is Toger.
See, I just like Togger.
I know
it
it's
rhymes
not
with
phonetically
Frogger,
correct, but you know,
hang on.
it's a Polish family background thing. So
how do we remember that? It's like because it's a toga, like Togger.
He's got toes. Grr. Does that help you, Blake?
Maybe.
You can't just remember.
Also, it looks like our cameras have come back on. I'm recording with them right now. Somehow they're maybe alive. So, no,
it's a miracle.
I know.
Maybe not. We have a live disaster story on the podcast right now. Right. Okay, we need some video help. Okay, we're gonna do our 5 Truths and a Lie, the weekly game that we do every week with our guests to learn a little bit about them and to compete with Toby. And he doesn't know that he's behind by 23.
Is that true?
No.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point. I'm
Number
not doing well.
I worked as a TD at the same church for 15 years.
Think it was continuous?
That means that his TD could have got his permit.
Or was it more like Michael Jordan, where he took a season off to pursue professional baseball?
I think that's one of the most compelling cases of his greatest athlete of all time. It's like taking a year off and going back. Number 2, I once owned a painting company.
Okay.
No.
Entrepreneurial kind of spirit. So
what if he just dipped his beard into paint and then kind of dragged his beard?
I want to see these
the largest paintbrush there is.
Yeah.
Number 3, I've never owned a new car before. Not bougie like Toby. Number 4, I carry heavy weights in a backpack for exercise. What if I told you about the bodies we bury? Like, you don't tell people that you carry them.
Now, if Toger puts heavy weights in a backpack and then you walk next to him, who's doing more exercise?
Toger by being next to me.
I'm just thinking like all the weight that you're carrying.
That's true. They do say fat people like me have more muscle because you actually have to develop it to carry the weight.
That's a good point.
My back muscles are great at this point. Number 5, I've been a Vikings film extra. Oh, for the show. I thought he was going to say a Vikings fan, and that would make no sense.
Okay.
Number 6, I collect Nikes because I'm a basic Christianese 21st century guy.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say 5 is a lie. I'm locking it in early so you don't steal mine.
Oh, wow.
So he looks like a Viking with the big old red beard. And so I just think that'd be a good little lie that he sneaks in there.
Okay. This is tough.
Yeah.
I'm going to say number 3 is false, that he's never owned a new car before. So Toger, he's got
Vikings.
And I've got new car. What's the lie?
Vikings and new car. So the Vikings is the lie.
Yes.
It's only because I didn't get the call back. I did go to casting. I did try out, but I didn't get the call back.
Did you have to do any shirtless scenes where you have to be like buff? And I don't know, the Vikings had tattoos. This is kind of
I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
It was a lot of headshots.
Yeah.
And a lot of reading.
So you worked at a church for 15 years. I mean, that's quite a while.
I did. Production director for 15 years over main broadcast campus and multi-site, kind of bounce back and forth. It's a long time.
And did you ever almost get fired?
Probably multiple times.
Okay, tell us about owning a paint company.
Yeah, I own my own painting company. We repainted houses. I focus primarily on like faux finishes and custom garage door work. So It's where I learned a lot of set design techniques for painting. I worked with a guy that actually painted backdrops for the Godfather films.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah. I love just the story of where the skill set comes from. A lot of the production guys that we talk to. It's a varied, intricacy of different places.
It's a multi-layered onion is the analogy he was looking for. Let's peel it another layer. Jerod, you worked there for 15 years. Give us just we've had you on before, so just you got the tougher job to give a quicker snapshot of your background in production ministry before we get to talking about conferences.
Yeah, basically, was production director at a church for 15 years, mixed live audio, oversaw broadcast locations for multi-site church. And that's where I picked up a lot of what I currently do and learned how to do.
Love that. And you were
that's a quick snapshot.
Working with Church Gear today as well as part of your role. And
Toby, you're not supposed to tell anybody that.
I'm not?
No. Now they know that he's, on our team.
Isn't he supposed to be on our team? Isn't that a public information?
But then it feels less authentic as a podcast episode.
Okay.
I think we might have let that out of the bag.
I know. It was in his introduction.
He allegedly works here.
Do you want to cut that little piece?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So, Jerod, it's awesome to have you as part of our team, working with churches down in the Southeast region. And so we've put you in from the bench today because we want to talk about production ministry related conferences. Jerod,
been to a few of those.
How many conferences do you think you've been to in your span of time?
Oh gosh, a lot. I would say there's probably at least 3 to 4 a year over the past 16 or 17 years. So that's a lot. It's a lot of conferences.
Yeah. And guys, I see often on these Facebook forums, somebody will put in the question of, okay, what conference should I go to? And so I thought maybe we could be helpful in kind of breaking down some of these and giving more context and information to help people make these decisions. I just got back from SALT, and so it was kind of on my mind. So let's talk conferences, boys.
Let's do it.
This is the time to plan. You don't want to plan a month before. It always drives me crazy when people are like, hey, Blake, let's go to this conference. I'm like, that's cool. When is it? Thinking it'll be months away. And they're like, it's next week. And I'm like, Toby, that's a bad idea. I got other things planned.
And it feels like there are two heavy seasons. It feels like spring and fall are the heavy seasons for conferences for some reason.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And Jerod, in your experience, when do most churches set their budget?
Usually either late into the year or it's right after the middle of summer, right in the smack in the middle of July. So either January or July.
Okay. So as you're making these plans for, we're going to talk about budgeting for them, but it's usually you got to put it in, early summer or, right before Christmas. So that definitely wants to be part of your planning process. So
what if you just packaged a little box and put it under the church Christmas tree and it said like inside the box was like, I need a conference budget of X and put the pastor's name on it.
Yeah. I'm wondering some of, churches with, they might have 12 people on their staff and then 200 some volunteers. And we'll talk about how to figure all that out if you want to send your team to a conference. But I kind of broke it out into, we've got some different categories, and I don't know that we're biased. I'm sure we are because every human's biased, but I think there are kind of some big ones when you're talking about church production space.
Philo's my favorite conference. I'm not biased. I am not biased at all.
Did Todd Elliott pay you before this, or
he doesn't have to pay me?
He just promised to be your best friend?
He just said, Blake, I think you're an okay guy, and I was like, that's enough. That's enough to buy me.
So in this category, again, this is just our opinion. I would tend to put Philo and SALT, and historically over the last several years, MXU, although that's shifted a bit. Jerod, do you have any opinions on what might also fall into that, like production-specific church production, big conferences?
Yeah, I mean, there's always some of the heavy hitter corporate ones that I think are good for production guys that are in churches to go to. You have NAM and InfoComm. Those are always ones that I tried to hit up and go to and see the new stuff that was coming out, so I could figure out how to get my finance team to laugh at me when I asked permission to buy things that cost $30,000 a piece. And MXU and Philo, those are always the great ones to go to as well, because a lot of the vendors are there and then you have local church guys you can connect with and network with as well. So I think those are some great ones off the top that are the heavy hitters.
So talking specifically about Philo and Salt, and they do kind of touch on a little bit different crowd. So Philo, I would say, is aimed at your just typical tech director, production director on kind of the technical side of things. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, and I'd say Philo is the pepper to salt, salt and pepper.
Oh, there you go, Blake.
Just need a little seasoning in this dry episode.
Well played. And so for Salt, we have more of the creative side of things, a lot of communications directors, video teams, graphic designers. And so just having kind of both sides of those coins in those two conferences. Jerod, have you been to both of those?
I've actually not been out to Salt. I've done the virtual attendee for Salt, but I haven't been to Salt in person.
I am shocked at this, actually.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Definitely been to Philo. Last year was my first year at Philo, actually, in person. So,
and we brought this guy on to talk about conferences. He's not gone to any of them. I know he's attractive, but dang.
Okay, Blake, give us some of your feedback between you've been to both Salt and Philo multiple years. Give us some of your thoughts. Do you see a big difference? I mean, we know you're not a tech guy.
But I think that makes me positioned well to give you a general sense is that Salt and Philo seem to be like both for technical people-ish, but Salt seems to lend more for the worship pastor and for the creative arts pastor. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's some good tech stuff. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, it's less of a focus. Philo is straight up, this is for the tech director. This is why it's my favorite.
Yep.
Us black shirts got to stick together. I want to go to the Philo. But both are really fun. And Salt is back in Nashville next year. Do we know?
Yes, we know. I looked on their page today, and it says Nashville 2025.
In October?
Typically, they're in October. I think one year they were in November, but typically October is when they...
The boring thing about these conferences the boring aspect is that we can pitch you and inform you on all the conferences, but honestly, where and when is probably just as important as the what.
Yeah.
Because you got to be available and you got to be able to travel there.
Yeah, Philo is in Chicago every year in the beginning of May.
First week of May.
Yeah, Salt for the first time was in Dallas this year. There is a rumor that Salt is going to just trade off each year, 1 year in Nashville, 1 year in Texas. I have not confirmed that with anybody on the Salt staff, but that's the rumor flying around.
That actually sounds really fun, though.
Yeah.
Todd, take a page out of that book. Come to Nashville for Philo 2025.
We'll host you in the Church Gear Warehouse. We can have about 7 people come.
Safely, we can have 2.5.
So I think, between Salt and Philo, like if you're at a big church and you have multiple teams between tech and creative and worship, like almost dividing and conquering between those two conferences, you're going to get a lot out of it if you do it that way. And
I would definitely agree.
Yeah. MXU is always great when they're doing events. We just don't know exactly year to year how they're going to do it. They kind of shift it up every year. So you got to kind of be on the lookout for that. So Jerod, Blake and I know nothing about these behemoth industry events of which you mentioned.
Yes.
I've been to NAM. Blake likes to call it NAB. There's also InfoComm. So for our listeners and teams that are considering these conferences, how are they different from something like Philo or Salt?
Well, Philo Salt is aimed a little bit at leadership as well, and really helping build up that tech leader that he may not get that time to, or she may not get that time to come in and worship and be able to network with others and just kind of learn how to be better leaders, where InfoComm and NAM are straight up focused at selling things, honestly, letting you know what's up and coming, whether it's lighting, video, audio, and they bring out all the cool toys to come and get your hands on and play with and see what you can afford to buy and maybe not afford to buy. And it's a great opportunity to make friends with all the reps also. I think that's important in the church tech world that people don't think about. Gotta know who those guys are when you're asking to buy stuff if you're hoping for a discount ever.
I was just about to ask, be real with us. You don't have to say any names. If you have a great relationship with one of the vendors as opposed to not at all, what big of a discount do you think that translates to?
Sometimes it can translate to a healthy discount. A lot of times it just translates to knowing about a piece of gear before it goes up on the website. So you know when to plan to order it. That's always helpful before things go on crazy back order. all the discounts in the industry change based on really who you know and how quickly you know about it.
Jerod, with Philo and Salt, let's say averaging around 1,000 people in person, what can these big industry conferences look like? Is it about the same size, or is it wildly bigger?
Wildly larger. Usually they take over large conference centers in Orlando and Vegas and are multi 3-4 days with breakouts that happen. So you're looking at between 3,000 and 8,000 usually.
And what kind of skill sets are you, perhaps looking to gain some insight at these industry conferences? I doubt they're talking about, discipling your volunteers, but, besides just looking at the gear, what are people learning at these industry events?
Yeah, there's great breakout sessions on how to use PA systems, how to safely rig things and hang things, as well as use microphones and stuff like that to the best of their ability. Because a lot of the times, church techs don't always have the best education on how to use things. So there's total breakout sessions. There's certifications that are going on with Dante and some of the speaker systems that you'd normally have to go to a trade school for or look up a local integrator to go and get those done, but you can get those done all of those conferences as well. So really hands-on and a great opportunity to get some of the certifications and things as well.
And is it like really in-depth technical speak, or can somebody like Blake go there and learn some basic skill sets?
Could definitely take people there and learn some basic skill sets. One of the great things about InfoComm is you can usually pay for a ticket, and if you know for a fact that you have a vendor or an integrator that's there, you can ask them for passes. It's a great time to take your volunteers and things like that, because they a lot of times can get passes that's not going to cost you anything out of pocket to take 2 to 5 people a piece usually. So,
and can you explain to Blake why one is called NAM and one is called NAB?
I think we need to make Blake go to learn.
Is NAB the one in Vegas?
It is, my friend.
I'm going to NAB. I'm going to NAB. This is so inside baseball, but we were literally looking at conferences next year, not even for this, just in our marketing department this morning. And me and Toby were like, what if we went to NAB to go to Vegas?
To clarify, I never said, what if we went to NAB?
Sure. You said, what if we went to NAB? And I said, I would love to nab a ticket to NAB.
There you go. Have you ever said you'd like to dab at NAB?
Well, that's what we'll be doing.
There you go. So Jerod, you're also right near Orlando. Experience Conference comes there every year. I likened that to in the worship category. Is that correct to say? Is there much production, specific education happening at Experience?
Not as much specific education, but there are some things where there's some vendors there, some great companies for getting in-ear molds done and things like that. Some of the reps to buy mics and things, but it is definitely more worship forward conference. But I think it's a great time to build those relationships with your worship team, if production team guys there, to be able to go and kind of have a time of relationship building and a set through worship instead of always being behind the scenes, being the one to mix things, going and attending with them. So I think it's a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I like
but it's
that.
definitely focused towards the worship more.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a really great opportunity if you're, struggling to understand. It'd be interesting for a worship leader and production to go to Philo together and then to go to Experience together and see the other's world and step into it. I think that'd be fun.
Yes, I agree.
And we don't have a ton of information about, some of the smaller ones, but I know Jake and Churchfront puts on his conference every year in Denver. And there's historically there's been Wave, and CFX is still going.
Yep.
Jerod, have you been to many of those? Kind of seen what they do?
I have been out to CFX and Wave both. I have not been to the Churchfront one, but I know several TDs who have and really enjoyed their time there.
Yeah.
Getting some more hands-on and learning from some guys that are in the field every day. But then Wave's a great opportunity. I think that's a good one that both worship and production teams can attend together. There's some great workshops for both there. So there's a lot of opportunity for cool vendors and some learning there as well. And they're constantly expanding it. I've been to, I think, through 2, maybe 3 of those.
Yeah. And I do think one of the advantages with, Wave, CFX, Churchfront is kind of what you said, hands-on. So if you're like some of our production friends and aren't the most outgoing or extroverted person and feel like a conference with thousands of people feels overwhelming and you won't really get to ask your questions, smaller events like these can be a great place where you can just have one-on-one time with the vendors. Like still a lot of the same vendors are there. I know right now CFX is going, like Canon is there, Sweetwater is there, several of the big vendors are there, and just to be in a smaller environment and have those more in-depth conversations to ask your questions could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there's opportunity for that at some of the larger conferences, but you really have to know tech speak to ask the right questions there. Where the smaller ones, yeah, you can ask and feel confident that no one's going to laugh at you or say, what do you mean? So I think it's a great opportunity there.
So we've got a lot of conferences here. How do we know what kind of conferences we should be looking for? Like, is it more for me? Is it for my team? Is it for my church? Like, what are the lenses you're looking through as you're trying to pick a conference other than what's the coolest city?
Sure, absolutely. No, I think when I was on church staff, one of the things that I looked for a lot was knowing, okay, I'm going to plan to go to 3 conferences this year. And I would plan one for me to personally go and learn something that the church needed to grow and qualify for, and have me qualified for, I should say. And so going to some of the larger ones and getting some of the certifications was great for me. But then being able to take my team to something like some of the smaller ones or the Philos or those kind of things, that was great to take some team members that were on staff. But I think if you're looking for volunteers, the thing you want to do is look at the ones you can get into for free. Let's be honest. Money's tight, and a lot of churches just don't have the money to send volunteers as well. And it's always awkward when you want to ask a volunteer to pay for a ticket. So, when you go to some of those larger ones, there's an opportunity to ask vendors to hook you up to get in a couple volunteers. So I think looking at that, as well as a couple of the smaller ones. I know Wave is great about helping people get in. So, but those are kind of the lenses that I look for, is like, okay, one for me to learn, one for my staff to learn, and then what can I take volunteers to help them learn something, but also feel like they're part of the team and grow that.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk expectations, because especially when we're pitching budget to our pastors, and what's our sale? What's our pitch? Like, hey, if you give me a few $1,000s to bring the team to this conference, we'll come away with, what? Are you going to be a wildly different team? Or is the Sunday morning experience going to be completely different because you went to this conference? Jerod, what should people actually expect to get out of these conferences?
That's a great question. So I think when you're looking to pitch yourself, you're looking at something that say, hey, I need to go look at this video switcher. If we want to incorporate new cameras this year, I want to go get my hands on this video switcher to know that the upgrade that we just did for cameras, the video switcher can handle those frame rates and things like that. Ask the industry inside questions on what the thing is that I should budget for the next budget year, really to narrow down on, nickels and dimes there on what you need for that. But then when you're looking at taking your team, I'm always looking for something where my team can take a win away from it, whether it be, hey, we're going to know how to use ProPresenter better, or this class is going to teach how to go through more of the stuff on the audio console and teach you about compression and things like that a TD may not always have the time to teach in a big group. Being able to take 2 or 3 people to those is great. Or you're looking to say, hey, what can we do to bring the team closer together? Make team dynamics more important. I think looking at things like Philo is great for that, where they can go and get kind of spiritually recharged, as well as just have time to hang out with each other outside of a Sunday morning.
Toby, is it just me? Or does Toger's head look like it's floating?
I was trying not to laugh because I was like, that's such a good meme of just his head and his beard.
Well, because Toger's in a black room with his black shirt, because we're the black shirts, and he's got the blur feature on. So, it looks like a floating head. I know it's Halloween still, but dang. Oh my gosh.
So that's funny.
One thing I harp on this a lot, just building community and building connections. So if you're on staff at a church and thinking, why should I go to a conference? Well, one of the top reasons should just be to meet other people who do what you do and build those relationships. Absolutely. Because there's, at Philo, there's 1,000 of them in a room together. And so go and say to yourself, like, all right, I'm going to meet 5 people at this conference that do my job at another church. Like, that is invaluable connection that you're going to build at these things.
As you're pitching your pastor, hey, would you like me to have someone to call that would help with tech stuff and they wouldn't charge us any money?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to find them at this conference. I also really like the thought of preparing your pitch to get budget for the conference, because it's going to just naturally get you prepared for what you're actually going for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you pick out the classes, you decide what would be good, and then you translate that value to the pastor. And then you've kind of just set yourself up to have a really good conference at the same time.
Yeah,
absolutely. And like you said, that's invaluable. I'm not on staff at a church anymore, but I always need help from churches. And I needed some space in Chicago to build some racks for a client of mine. And so I called up our friends at Willow Creek that I had made connections with at Philo, and they were able to help me out. So, things like that are great. The same thing when you're on staff at a church. Like you said, being able to call and say, hey, I have a question about this. Have you had to deal with this camera issue before? So we can record a really good podcast or Sunday morning service.
That hits a little too close to home, Jerod.
And if you're looking to build connections with other church staff, I would highly recommend Philo or SALT, depending on which department you work in. Jerod, are people able to make connections with other church staff at like NAB and NAM, like these giant conferences? Or do you just kind of get lost in a sea of crowds?
Yeah, and are those church people, or is it like everyone in production?
It's a mixture of people, which I think is really cool, because it helps you make connections with people outside of the church world that are in the industry, as well as a lot of the guys put together things. Like, I know for InfoComm, when it comes to Orlando, Bobby over at First Baptist always puts together a tour and tries to get all the techs together over there. So there's still plenty of times for team building things and after hours dinners and events. So it's a great time to kind of network and team build there as well.
Jerod, I know kind of how I do this. How do you, in advance for a conference, like get the word out that you're going to be there and, see who else is and what dinners you might be able to get yourself invited to or other events? Like, there are a lot of opportunities if you can make it known that you're going to be at these events.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I really utilize just the network that I've built over the years of knowing people and going to these, sending out text messages, posting on social media. And then a lot of the vendors, if you have bought things from them before, they will always email you and invite you to events and things like that. So really being on the lookout for those things, but being up on where to go on Facebook groups and ask those questions, posting to the church media texts and the different things like that, asking who's going to be there to set up those times in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I did for SALT. Is I went on Church Sound Media Techs and said, hey, I'm going to SALT. Who's going to be there? And, there were 20 different people that responded. I was able to.
And they said, stay away from me.
They said, wait, are you bringing Blake with you? And I was like, nope, just me. And they said, great, come on in.
Lies.
So, Togher, not everybody is blessed as you to go to 3 or 4 a year for 16 years in a row, or Blake, who we make to go to every conference so he can learn how to talk to people.
You only have to make me go to the other ones. I go to Philo every year very happily.
Realistically, how many should church staff aim to go to?
Realistically, I think if you could do 2, most church staff is doing incredible, but a lot of them only get the chance to pick 1. So I think you need to plan on what you're wanting to focus on for that year. If you're looking to buy something, maybe look into the NAMs and the InfoComms and figure out how to plan and budget for that. But if you're looking to buy something new, that would be where I looked. If I'm looking to purchase something used and things like that, I would definitely look at some of the smaller ones, talking to some of the other churches. Figuring out where church gear is going to be is a great one. You can figure out where we're at and come talk to us there as well. So I think that's a great opportunity. But looking for what's close and local in the area, if you only have one that you can plan on, keep the travel costs low. Don't try and fly 6 states away for your first conference that you're going to spend more on a airline ticket than your, fee to get in.
Yeah. It's fun to see all the production teams that come to Philo and how many of them, like, they just all jumped in a 15-passenger van and they drove up from Oklahoma or wherever.
Didn't someone drive from Alaska one time? It was something astronomical. Like, I remember it being a 19-hour day.
That sounds awful.
Well, it depends on who the other people are.
That's true.
Do you pitch your pastor 2 conferences and settle for 1? Just a thought.
Ooh.
Just a thought.
Ooh.
And also, one of the hacks we've used is get an Airbnb instead of paying for 7 hotel rooms.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
Again, if you're reaching out to people you know ahead of time that are going to be there, jump in on an Airbnb together. You split the cost, and it's a great way to save money.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's a great way to catch up with those other churches.
Yep.
And those guys is say, hey, there's 5 of us. Let's get an Airbnb. We don't always get a chance to catch up and hang out and ask questions and kind of talk shop there as well.
And at the end of the day, if your pastor's really on the edge, be like, look, man, this is a work perk. You know, I spend all this time here. Like, this is a work perk. Maybe don't say that. Depends on how they are. Okay, other than all the swag you're looking to take away from a conference, you know, you go around with your little baggie, get all the free swag. What else should we look to take away?
I think you need to know before you go. So figuring out what you want to learn and have as a takeaway going into it. If you're looking to connect with a vendor to purchase something from, know that ahead of time. Look for them right away and get those questions answered. But I think the big thing that I'm looking for most of the time when I go to a conference is to network and to kind of get recharged, because as techs, we live behind the scenes a lot and get stuck on things. So getting a chance to kind of be recharged and hear other people's issues and that they're dealing with the same thing and you're not alone, that's a huge one. So just remembering to be open to that.
I just love the idea of going in prepared and knowing ahead of time. And I think even, you know, if I was a pastor, my production guy comes to me and says, hey, can I have $1,000 to go to this conference? My first question would be like, well, what are you going to get out of it? I don't know. It's a production conference, so production stuff. But if you go to your pastor and say, hey, this is the cost, but here's what I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to meet and build connections with a bunch of other people. Here are some of the classes they offer, which I specifically want to go to and bring these skills back. I also have these questions that I get to ask the experts. You know, it's so different just going to a conference and attending and not making any connections or asking any questions, to the opposite of that, where you gain so much knowledge and community and you get to bring that all back to your church. And that's a huge win for a pastor.
Absolutely. And if I'm the pastor and I'm asking for money, that's the first question I'm going to ask you is why. So if you plan that answer ahead of time, have that planned out, just make those your same goals when you go there. Make sure to check those off the list. At a 3-day conference, if you're efficient, you can do all those things the first day and have the rest of the time to relax a little bit and coast and just get to hang out with friends. So
the more I think
be smart about it.
The more I think about this, yes, I think one of the takeaways today is like, if it's just funny, because my question to you was, what do you take away from the conference? My takeaway from this episode is know what you're going to take away from the conference ahead of time.
Yep.
Then you can be intentional about it.
Yeah, there is, I mean, I don't mean this in a slimy way. Like, there's so many, you know, vendors and integrators that actually want to love on you and take good care of you. And so if you make it known that you're going to come, like, you can get a lot of just free downtime. So if you were going to the SALT conference this last year and you knew ahead of time that Amplio was offering their Worship Classic, which is a free day of golf and food, like, you could have gone and played golf and ate great food for free the day before. And then vendors love to take people to dinner and just spend time with them. So it can be a great vacation while also being a really productive conference.
Absolutely.
Now, my final question for you, great O and wise Toger, since you're just a floating head on a black
I'm so glad you see it too. I almost think we're going to have to post something from this episode just to show it.
Do I have to go? Like, look, I'm an introvert. I'm busy. Sunday keeps happening. Like, can I just read books? Can I participate in the Facebook forums or even just attend the conference online?
So yes, you could just attend the conference online, but I think it's just like attending church online. It's okay once in a while, but sometimes you need to go surround yourself with other people and get outside of your comfort zone, because that's where you really get grown and stretched and learn. You just got to be in person. So if you have to budget every other year, go to one every other year and attend online because it's cheaper, but aim to be there every year. Just work it into your budget and make it part of it.
Toby has to budget, but it's not budgeting his money. He's budgeting his energy for if he can go to a conference.
100%.
Toger, for real, just between the two of us, at Philo last
all
year.
All of our listeners.
he couldn't find him for at least an hour.
Toger was there.
Okay.
I was there.
Well, then let's just tell the audience. He was gone for an hour or two, and I was like, where is Toby? And I looked under the table with those table skirts. Apparently their purpose is for the owners of companies to take naps and hide from people.
I wonder if some of our listeners will come up this year and pull up the skirt and see if I'm under there. That'd be so funny. And I did realize at SALT, so we didn't have a booth, so I just sort of floated around and had conversations. I realized as an Enneagram 7, that's actually how I get energy, because I have a new distraction every 5 minutes.
Well, then just don't stay at the booth at Philo this year, Just walk around.
I think that's my plan now.
And then we don't have to deal with each other. It'd be a great day. I can't even say on this conference how Toby describes his energy levels at the end of the days. It's just, not good. Toby fakes extrovertism better than anyone I know, so you forget how tired it makes him.
Yeah, I can turn it on for a certain amount of time, but when it's done, it's just done. It's crazy.
He has a look on his face that's really funny. You should come up to us at the end of the day at Philo in 2025. I know that's where we're going for sure. We don't know. We'll be at SALT. We won't have a booth, very likely. We'll be at InfoComm and NAB and others. We'll be around just because we love them all. Are you saying we get around, Toby?
Just a little bit. But for our, very specific customer kind of demographic, Philo is often the most, focused and productive event for us as church gear.
And the most fun. Okay, we're impartial. Jerod, I'd like to just offer you up a grab bag here. We can either do a tech takeaway, which we didn't talk about tech today. We talked about conferences. So if you've got a conference takeaway, or if you're like, I'd rather do another disaster story, I'll give you either or, man. You
or both.
Choose your own adventure story.
Ooh, let's make it a 2-for-1 on why you should go to a conference and get a certificate in learning something. So this tech disaster doesn't happen.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
So once upon a time when I worked at a church, I may or may not have ended up on church fails. Because we changed out one of our network switches on the Dante. And when that happened, it caused the loudest static noise you've ever heard, smack in the middle of worship right before a message. The most critical part of the service just all goes to complete static, band pulling out their in-ears. It was terrible. All because we were like, let's put a new switch in and make sure those updates are good to go. And then terrible things happen. So buy a ticket, go to a conference and learn what you're doing instead of just plugging things in.
Now, Jerod, what would you have rather have happened? That thing, or would you have rather have had diarrhea in an IEM pack and then have to, tell your worship leader?
Ooh. That's very specific. Has this happened to you?
What would you rather have had? Just answer the question, Jerod. What would you rather have had happen?
One of them, only the worship leader would have found out about.
I knew he was a diarrhea man.
The other one, everyone online and my pastor. And I had to explain that to him multiple times. So, And
do you guys switch the network out in the middle of service? Is that what happened?
No, we switched the network switch that week before, tested it, and everything was working.
Okay.
But we didn't run all scenarios. And when a backup mic was handed off, bad things happened.
Wow.
The pain. Jerod, speaking of something that's not pain, would you like to plug anything you want to point people towards?
Man, maybe I'm a little biased, but I would love to point them back towards church gear. It's a great time of year to purchase stuff because we are coming up on that Christmas season. So maybe don't purchase something new this year. Buy something used that you can use in your service this year and not have to explain to finance why you need more money because you didn't prepare.
That's right. The budget is running out for the year.
And you can also save money so you can go to a conference.
Oh, I like it. I like it. That actually is not a bad tip.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, man, thanks for joining us. And I can't wait to see you at all the conferences we go to next year.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Blake, do you feel like when we see Toger at Philo, he will still be just a floating head, or do you think he'll bring his body with him to Chicago?
Well, I think he'll still be a floating head at Exponential, and so maybe by Philo, he'll have grown his body back.
That's a good call. And I don't even know where to go with this, but this kind of nonsense should absolutely be shared on social media.
Share this on social and say, hey, I'm trying to figure out which conference I'm going to go to next year. Comment below what conference you're going to, and then maybe you can link up with some friends and decide together what conference you want to go to.
Yeah, that'd be fun if we could network everybody to figure out who's going where and how they can link up while they're there and have the best time ever.
This outro suddenly turned helpful, and that feels very weird for me.
I know. Okay, nonsense.